Thank you very much for joining our Interop and AI webinar. Um, we expect this to be the first in a series of webinars about our experiences of how we can help the adoption of AI with Interop-enabled platforms. Uh, our kind of tagline really, intelligence meets actions, is the kind of key of what we're proposing. I think we have a slightly different view on AI. We'll talk about that a lot, but in the end, we're about offering maybe a slightly alternative way to bring AI to work now, so quickly and safely within your workflow. So we'll talk about that and we'll show it. And we're really, really interested in feedback. So there's a Q&A for you to ask questions. We'll take questions at the end, but also we please email us with suggestions and questions. And we really want this to be learning for both of us. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So if we go on to the next slide, I'm Leslie Spiro. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Interop.io, and I'm going to be talking to static slides and hand over to my colleague who's doing the high wire stuff that can actually fail. Bob, if you introduce yourself.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. I'm Bob Myers, SVP of Product, and as Leslie said, I'll be daring today to do a live software demo. So look forward to that.
And I can see the more experienced people going, why are they doing a live demo? Because just it's the right thing to do. So we want to cover what we're trying to get out of this webinar series, what we hope you get out of it, but also it's a two-way trade and what we're hoping to get out of it as well. We'll also be talking about our view at Interop.io of how Interop can work well with AI. And by Interop, we mean a desktop product or a browser-based product that allows applications to work together using the Interop AI for synchronization or the FTC3 API. And we'll talk about what that lets you do and how that's slightly different to a lot of people's approach to AI. I'll talk about some of the key terms we're using just to make sure we're all on the same page about some of those things. Most of them are new words that are very AI specific, but some like tools are kind of open to misinterpretation or they already exist. We'll then be handing over to our Highwire Act for demos, both of using AI as a co-pilot for wealth managers, which is interesting, I think, and also sparked a lot of interest from some of our users who are not wealth managers. So look for that. And then we'll also be introducing our Interop.io chat UI, which is hosted in our desktop or browser products. We'll then be talking about some of the client use cases we've seen in what's a very short space of time. Bob will be talking about the lessons we've learned, some general observations, which are for your usage, and we'll be interested to see how they resonate with you. Talking about what's next, and then we expect there'll be time for dealing with your questions. And since we are looking for future webinars, some of these questions may be taken as subjects for a future webinar. So please do use the Zoom Q&A window to submit any questions as you're going through. Great. So what we're seeing is that as we introduce, everyone's got a view on AI, and some of our clients have got very extensive projects where they're looking at how they're going to introduce AI into their business. And we introduced the ways in which Interop can support AI, particularly about providing effectively a co-pilot assistant style support, and that can be rolled out very quickly and safely, as opposed to some of the more deeper AI projects which are fully agentic, which worry enormously about hallucination and safety. And we can support both styles actually. Our goal here in the series is to highlight the potential, how quick it can be to do things, and to share the lessons that we've learned, both because we think they'll be useful to you, but also because we hope you'll share questions and learning with us so that we can all start to work out how to use this groundbreaking, I hate using the cliche, but it is groundbreaking technology, both for immediate benefit and also how it's going to change probably a lot of what we do over the next 5 or 10 years at least. I know some people say 6 months. We'll talk about that. Interesting, potentially future webinar topic. And one of the things we'll be stressing is that to get this kind of co-pilot assistant thing, you don't need to make a large investment in AI to get some benefit. Although lots of people, lots of our larger clients are making that investment and um, getting interesting results. And you will talk about one of the use cases when one of our largest clients got a huge boost out of using Interop with their AI to augment what they've done on after a very large investment. So what have we learned so far? Well, we certainly learned that those of our clients who've got large AI projects, some of which they've spoken to newspapers about, um, their main focus has been on training internal models, how they load proprietary information, what they're allowing, what they're not allowing, and those projects typically are either trying to deliver agentic workflows, which are very much without people, um, uh, or more co-pilot or assistant style stuff where the primary interface to the AI is chat, and we call them co-pilot or assistant. Some clients have called them coach. Some people call them chat UI. Why it's worth kind of identifying terms. Um, and we'll talk about some of the benefits of that, but certainly that co-pilot model doesn't require custom training. You can see that we're able to show some really interesting um, support without any just using generic off-the-shelf LLMs. A key part of everything we've been doing most recently is this Model Context Protocol, MCP, MCP servers. Those of you who take more tech feeds, I've been seeing so much of this the last 3 or 4 months. And it really the key to unlocking this. We were doing hackathons in January before really MCP, we were aware of MCPs as a major thing. And we had some interesting use cases about Interop and AI. But really, the release of MCP by Anthropic with support on the standard Claude UI unlocked a load of stuff that we could just do immediately. So it's an open source standard proposed by Anthropic. Everyone said they're going to support it. If you run up the UIs from the various LLMs, I think still the case that Anthropic's the only one, Claude, that actually supports it, but everyone else is going to support it. And when we show our model, we'll show that we can run the same stuff on into different models. But those are our key learnings, which is that there's an agent style and there's a co-pilot style of use. We can help with both. A lot of the big focus stuff are around agents, and this take providing an MCP server. If you have interop enabled platforms, applications, which is an incredibly simple thing to produce. And we'll talk about that maybe in a separate webinar about how you might interop enable some applications if you're not using this yet. Suddenly transformed, made it so much easier to make those things available. So just to clarify some of the terminology, um, we're kind of big on this agent versus assistant or co-pilot style of working. We support both. Most of the demos we're looking at are more co-pilot assistant. They're often safer and quicker to deploy. Um, and MCP is the technology we use to make things available into the chat UI. So most of what we're doing is our demos certainly and our clients' first use cases are all around using the chat UI to the models. MCP talks about tools a lot. So what we're doing is we are making tools available to the chat UI using MCP, which then makes those functions available to the language models. We'll talk about those in a bit. But the tools themselves are functions or actions that the chat UI tells the LLM about, and the LLM, the actual AI, can ask the chat UI to execute one of those tools and go from there. Now, when Anthropic described MCP, they said tools are a fantastic way to bring data into your models. And that's true. And obviously, Anthropic are all about what data can we bring in and train and augment, improve our model. But we took a completely different approach. We went, the great thing about tools is that we can give the AI these ways to get shit done. So we're really all about, you'll see in the demos, about letting the AI take actions on the desktop using applications that are secure, proper sign-ins, good security, permissioning entitlements, and allowing the user to see what's going on, which is where we get our safety and our speed of deployment from. But tools are cool. And the language models are the key AI thing. And we're seeing most people are using large language models from the key vendors, OpenAI, Anthropic. Um, and most of our clients we're talking to who've got an AI project are using OpenAI via Azure. We see some people using Anthropic. We haven't seen anybody yet using Llama or Grok. We're playing with them just to be aware of what's going on in the market. But I also think local models could be very useful for this Copilot usage scenario because pretty much you don't need, for a Copilot, you don't always need that deep domain knowledge. You really just need a natural language processor. And so that's something we're looking at now, not part of this demo. I think we'll probably do a webinar on it after the summer. So those are some of the words that I just want to make sure we've all got a kind of idea of the same definition of. So if we move on to Bob.
All right. Thanks, Leslie. It's a great scene setting. And I think you'll see some of those tools and concepts in action today in our demos. Just to kind of quickly set the stage here, we're going to do about 10 to 15 minutes of demos and conversation around them before we switch to the real world use cases. What you're going to see today in the demos is a blend of off-the-shelf AI tools. So we're going to be looking at things like Claude Desktop. We're going to be using the Interop MCP server that Leslie mentioned, and then a variety of Interop adapters. So that's what you'll see today. We're going to start with a little bit of a role playing just to give an example, a real world example of a problem, a business problem that we might want to solve. We'll do a before and after, how you would solve that today with IO Connect, and then how you would solve it with Interop or IO Connect and AI. So in this scenario, I'm a wealth advisor serving high net worth individuals, and I receive a message, could be over email, could be over chat, from a client. Hey, Bob, I'm seeing a lot of noise and volatility in the market. I'm sensitive to some of the headline risks that might be impacting my holdings. Specifically, what's my exposure to Tesla? Can you send me an updated report with my portfolio details? Thanks, Alice Johnson. So it's a pretty straightforward request. And at this point, I'm going to jump out of PowerPoint and we're going to go to sort of a live desktop view here. So just very quickly, I think most folks on the call are pretty familiar with Interop and our IO Connect platform. But if I was serving my client and I wanted to respond to Alice Johnson's request today, I have a variety of tools available to me today, even before AI. I've got maybe point solutions where I could take a look at a portfolio exposure view for a particular client, filter down to a particular holding, graphically explore that information. This would give me the data I would need to answer Alice's question. I might also have a layout or a workspace that glues together a variety of different applications to answer that question. So in this case, I've got 3 different applications joined together on a channel that allows me to sync between client, holding, and a visual. And again, this is the current state. I could do things like email a client using the Interop Outlook adapter and dump down a holding view or a holdings view of their portfolio. So the current state is already pretty good, and believe it or not, we're going to show that this can be made even better with AI. So let's move IO Connect to the side here, and I'm going to pull up Claude, which is again is off-the-shelf chat UI AI, and we're going to work through that same workflow. Before I get started, I do want to call out, we've mentioned these MCP tools. This won't be a technical demo, but what I've registered to Claude or the chat UI of your preference is the Interop MCP server. And we've got a variety of tools here, some sort of granular tools like getting the current user or starting applications, and then some more specific tools like producing an exposure report or sending an email or saving a report. So all the things I just covered, I will be able to do. And in this case, AI understands that these tools exist and can use them on my behalf depending on the prompts that I provide. So to start out this workflow, we're just going to put, in this case, my Copilot Claude into a little bit of a specific mode. In this case, I want uh, Claude to understand that I'm a wealth advisor. I want it to act as my research associate. I want it to focus on factual information from internal systems. And once I put the LLM in that mode, I'm able to then go ahead and handle the specific requests that we talked about. So this is that same inquiry from my client, Alice Johnson, and I'm just adding a few additional guardrails here saying that I'd like to review the work product that Claude creates before we send an email, for example. So I'm going to send that through, and what you're going to start seeing on the screen here is really that process of the large language model understanding the tools that are available via MCP and then using those on my behalf. So what's going on in the background here, each of these calls, sorry, it's pulling up the PowerPoint as I requested there. It's getting the client list for Alice Johnson. It's opening up PowerPoint because it knows it needs that to create a presentation. It's now going through and creating an exposure report for that particular client. And I realize this is going fast, but that's the benefit, obviously, of being able to use AI to execute this. And what it's generated in the background here and what had popped up there is an actual formatted report. So this is today's date for Alice Johnson, point in time view of her portfolio, including Tesla. And this is using the Interop PowerPoint adapter, a formatted template, which would be representative of your particular organization's template, and then her information extracted from that point solution for portfolio exposure. I won't read through all this, but one of the nice things about sort of a co-pilot or an assistant is it's giving a readout of the work that it's doing. It's also stopped the process here because I asked for it to pause and let me review things before it proceeded to an email. So assuming I've checked the data and everything looks good, I'm just going to ask it to proceed to drafting an email for Alice. And so the pattern you're going to see on the screen here, uh, it's asking me if it wants to, if I have a preference on the file name. I don't, so I'll just have it choose one. Again, it's acting as my assistant, and if it needs clarification, it'll ask me. So we'll proceed to the email. And this pattern on the screen that you're seeing is going to become pretty familiar, where the tools are chosen not by me, they're chosen by the large language model based on the descriptions in our MCP server, and Claude can take action on my behalf. So here we have an email that's been drafted with that same content. So a couple of quick additional points here before we move to the next demo. This was sort of an example of answering a single client inquiry. What we found really powerful is because that's so efficient, once we're comfortable with the pattern and the AI assistant working on our behalf, you could then do things like loop through all of your clients, ask your assistant to go find every client that might have Tesla in their portfolio and generate the same type of formatted presentation on their behalf and an email and draft that out. There's also intelligence built in. So if you were looping through that client list, Claude wouldn't, your AI wouldn't necessarily do Alice Johnson again. It understands that you already did that activity. So it's a really capable co-pilot or assistant for getting work done.
And
So go ahead, Leslie.
well, and one of the disadvantages of Zoom is that I've got no idea whether any of you are going wow or not. Because the first time I saw this, it was like wow. Because the Claude we're using here, the model we're using here, knows nothing about being a wealth advisor. It was a small prompt, and the tools just worked. And it brings up the PowerPoint for review. It brings up the email for final thing. And that was all just amazing because there was almost no special training or anything. Well, there was no special training. There's a little bit of playing around to see what worked. And when we then said do it for all clients, it just worked. And we hadn't thought about that. And when it said, oh, I won't do Alice Johnson because I've already done it, we never thought of specifying that. And it goes to show the kind of level of goodness that these assistant or co-pilots can be for almost no effort. And these words quick and safe. Deploying this is incredibly quick and safe. If you have Claude, you have these Interop apps, and Interop enabling your apps is incredibly simple, then you suddenly get a huge boost quite safely without worrying about hallucination. You see the emails and stuff before they go out without worrying about how do I get it deployed. Yeah. So I don't know if any of you went wow, but if not, think about it. I think it's a wow moment. And so I've said how much the model can just do things without knowing anything. Why do you need Interop? Because actually you need your applications, your in-house applications like the client list and the client portfolio and the tools that you use from other people like PowerPoint and Outlook. You need them to become scriptable, and that's what Interop has been doing for 10 years now. And that kind of data synchronization, data scripting, and visual integration are the things you need. And so we've had that in our product for ages, and the MCP server just makes that available to your UIs, and that's why you need Interop, because you need your apps to be scripted. Um, so I think we're going to move on to the next demo. I see a couple of questions coming in. Please come. I think somebody said "wow" in the Q&A. Thank
Ah,
you very
nice.
much.
Cool. Well, this next demo, I also think it's a pretty cool demo. This one I won't be walking the high wire. This is a recording of our chat UI, but it'll be very very quick. But I wanted to set the scene. Why did we go down the path of building our own chat UI? There are a couple of key reasons. Some of our clients do have existing chat interfaces that they can leverage, and in that case, they can just hook in the MCP server to those. Others have the ability to take off the shelf AI tools like Claude, as we demonstrated, but many don't for various reasons. And so we were seeing this as a blocker to some of the early experiments and prototyping that we were doing with clients. So we wanted to build our own chat UI that can hook into a variety of different large language models. That was the other reason we wanted multi-model support. We also wanted to make sure that we had an experience that worked in the desktop and the browser. We also needed, I would say, purpose-built capabilities that tie into interop concepts, and you'll see one of those on this demo, which is the ability to pass to AI context from a channel, for example. So those folks on the call that are familiar with some of those core interop capabilities and sort of FDC3 standard capabilities, being able to kind of fit the chat UI and AI seamlessly into that experience was something that we found really important. In addition to that, we wanted a prompt library that really would add efficiency to the ways that you work with your AIs, and we felt like having more control over that was better. And then last but not least, we really wanted to have observability built in from day one. For those of you that are familiar with interop solutions, we've got a tool called IO Insights, which is based on the Open Telemetry standard. And as you deploy these copilots into your organizations alongside your current workflows, we've built in observability day one to make sure that you understand the actions they're taking. In this case, they're very explicit. They're using MCP tools, as well as just sort of the ability to test the capabilities of a variety of different AI systems in the background. So I'm going to play this quick recorded demo here, and what we're going to see is a very similar use case to what I showed with Claude, but using the IO Assist chat UI to execute that. So on the screen here, we're connected to our Interop MCP server, multiple LLMs, and the IO Connect platform. We've got the ability, because this is multi-model, to switch between different providers. In this case, we've got Anthropic and OpenAI available. We've also got the ability to leverage a powerful prompt library, which you can saturate with your own prompts. Some of those are long prompts that you wouldn't want as a user to put in every time. These are typically role-based prompts, similar to what I showed on the first demo, putting it into the mode of a research associate using internal tools, etc. The next part here is really powerful. We've got this hooked up, the chat UI hooked up so it understands channel context. So in this case, at the top of the screen, you'll see that we're actually listening to the channel, and we've got Amazon as an instrument and Jane Smith as a client passed through as context. What that allows us to do is using the context and a prompt, the LLM can actually respond appropriately. So in this case, we're just asking for that same portfolio exposure report with a PowerPoint presentation and email summary. The difference is instead of copying and pasting in a request from Alice Johnson, for example, it's filtered to the particular instrument and client that's in the channel context. And so really picking up on some of those core interop concepts along with AI. And this pattern at this point on the call is very familiar, right? The AI is finding the right tools, it's executing them, or invoking them on my behalf. And then at the end of the day, we're going to have a work product to review. In this case, it's the email to a client with a formatted presentation. So again, just a nice example of not only how easy it is to get work done, but how we want to bring AI into the existing workspaces, layouts, applications, interop, and FDC3 concepts you're familiar with, and trying to fit that seamlessly into into the workflow. So those are some of the early prototypes and POCs that we're doing. Really wanted to underscore the quick and safe message, but I think it's also interesting to move beyond sort of the demos into some use cases that we're seeing in the market. So I'll hand it back over to Leslie to talk through some of what our clients are actually doing today.
Thanks, Bob. Just picking up four, but just to put the timeline into place, we first showed our MCP server the ability for Interop to work with AI at the end of April at the London Client Forum, and people saw it, and many people went wow. We could tell they went wow, and we then said, "Would this be useful to you?" And a lot of people came and said yes, and a lot of people look at a use case like the wealth thing and they go, that wealth thing is exactly like my equity traders see when they try and create a trader blast email. So one of our clients who've got an AI project, decent sized client, went and said, this could be really helpful. And because our traders, if they want to send out a note about a particular market event, need to get data from things like Bloomberg, internal research, external research, various other apps, form an email and send it out to a particular group. Well, that's pretty similar in concept to what the wealth manager is doing. And so we gave them, they already had Interop. We gave them the bit of software they needed, the MCP server that brings those tools available into Chat UI. They connected that. They had a custom Python Chat UI. They connected that into the server, and then they could suddenly do this. They went into a hackathon 2 days later. They had a product that was running and won the hackathon, and now they're extremely keen to get it into production as soon as possible. And they feel they can do that because it's using tools they've already got. It's quick and safe. And it's yes, it's using their model, but some of the stuff they've been doing with much bigger investment of real AI, you might call it, they're a little bit more reluctant to release. And so this was a great way to get a really short time to value. Another client said, "Oh, for structured fixed income products, we have this real problem where describing the instrument is hard. We've got a spreadsheet where they can produce the actual ID of these bonds." And we just said, fine, you just have a chat UI as a co-pilot, you type in what you want, and the model's got enough information through a through data presented through a RAG, to be able to actually bring up the order ticket. So they had an Interop enabled trader entry, brings up the order ticket, does not place the order. Really important part of our advice really to you about how to use this Interop and AI. Very happy, really worthwhile. Again, quick and safe. We then had another of our clients in wealth, and they made a big investment in AI. They're using it in production, getting lots of benefit. They've got OpenAI hosted through Azure, their own chat UI, which is primarily about providing advice. It has lots of custom data in. And what they really excited about was they could just take this interop. They could take their interop methods, choose a subset of those methods to define as tools, and then suddenly their product, which is in live in production, could suddenly do a load more stuff. And really a great example of even people who have made a big investment in AI can get a lot of value out of adding Interop through MCP servers into their environment. So really pleased with that. The SaaS vendor one is something that came up the other week, and really it's about adding a Copilot to any SaaS application. So you have a SaaS application runs in our browser-based product, IO Connect browser, and using our chat UI, they can suddenly have a Copilot experience just by defining a few methods. And then also they can say our clients typically have Salesforce, or maybe they have Bloomberg, or whatever chat mechanism they're using. And this Copilot can suddenly start to use those as well as the SaaS application. Again, quick and safe. We do have a question about how much data, proprietary information needs to go into the models, and we'll cover that in the Q&A, but we certainly got ways in which you can address that. So in what's basically 6 weeks, those are four really interesting use cases. I hope that when I've described them very quickly, you're thinking, oh yeah, that would be like this or that, and we really would like to hear from you, work with you to see how whether that makes any sense for you, and let you experiment with it. So yeah, back to you, Bob.
Yeah, thanks for covering those, Leslie. Yeah, it's really exciting. And actually, I know of an additional two demos that are going out this week from clients that have taken an early preview of our MCP server and quickly worked through this. So there is a call to action there. If this is interesting, we can get you set up and started pretty quickly on the experiments that you would want to do. Uh, we were learning a lot as we go, obviously, and we want to share that with you. These are a couple of topics. I'm gonna share some early thoughts, but these could be their own webinar topics. Really, they can be pretty deep and involved. So as I go through these, a poll is going to pop up, and please cast your vote for these topics if you find them to be interesting, or if you want us to spend more time on them in future webinars, or if you want something different, please let us know. Let us know that as well. So these are based on not only our own experiments with rolling out AI and Interop, but our clients doing these various POCs and prototypes and providing feedback to us. So the first thing I wanted to touch on is tool definition, which is sort of at the core of what we've shown today. And I'd say there's really two ways to think about that tool definition: atomic versus composite. And atomic is better, I think, for more general usage. If you don't have maybe a specific use case, but you just want to get started defining the tools, the interop methods, or the FDC3 intents at a more granular level is a great way to get started. The AI can usually link them together, and you can kind of get started with some of those workflows. That being said, most of our clients, if they came with a specific defined use case, found that there was real value in a composite tool definition, which is usually connecting together multiple, API calls to accomplish a particular task. And so just a call out there, it really depends on if you have a clear sense of your use case or if you just want to get started. An example of the atomic tool would be something like open an application or open PowerPoint, whereas a composite tool might be open PowerPoint, use a specific formatted template, and then generate an exposure report for a client. You may have better repeatability and success with the composite tools, but we're happy to provide guidance on that based on what we've seen with clients as they've gone through the POC and prototyping phase. On the prompt engineering side, we're kind of using this to talk about both the prompts that I showed today, those role-based prompts or task-based prompts, but also tool descriptions. And I'd say part of the experiments and POCs, the purpose of them is gaining comfort on your side, that given a set of tools and a request that you make, that the results are repeatable and acceptable. And I'd say in our experience, much of this comes down to the prompts that you use or the ways that you describe the tools. So really spending time here defining those, and that's why we wanted to have a prompt library, so that didn't need to be an ad hoc exercise. It could be durable, is an important activity. An example would be that the role that you ask AI to assume, so in the demos I showed today, for example, becoming an expert research associate, will actually change the way that the LLM selects tools on your behalf. So just something to keep in mind. Tool definitions and their functionality and utility, defining those in natural language is a good opportunity to have a better outcome, but also the roles and the prompts that you use around tasks will be an area that there's some fine tuning that we think is valuable and leads to a better outcome. Last but not least, on the LLM side, this is a question we get all the time: which one to use? Assuming that your enterprise or your organization hasn't already selected one for you, and it's not really a choice to be made. What we think this comes down to is observability of their performance given a set of tasks or inputs or tools. And so we showed our chat UI. That's one of the reasons we made it multi-model, so that you can essentially flip back and forth between LLMs that you're testing out and see the difference given the same prompts and tools, what differs in the response, not just the content of the response, but the latency maybe of finding those tools or selecting them. And so I mentioned our IO Insights product, being able to also speed test that and having that observability data, we think is going to be helpful as you select LLMs. The last point here is that different LLMs are good at different things. For the Copilot use cases that Leslie and I talked about today, you actually don't need to necessarily have the most knowledge as an LLM of more general real world knowledge. And by that, I mean you don't need a state of the art large language model to necessarily get started here, or the cost that is associated with having a state-of-the-art cutting edge large language model. This idea of tool selection and understanding them, we've actually seen a lot of good success with older models or less powerful models. So just something to keep in mind. It's not necessarily that you need to go out and get the latest and greatest LLM. But those are some of our early thoughts here. As I mentioned, these are lessons from our clients and from our experiences. We're happy to expand on those, and I'll be interested to see the poll results on what people are interested in having us go deeper on. All right. So what's next for Interop and AI before we get to the Q&A? Just quick call out here. We've shown today our MCP server, which is an early preview. Obviously, there's been a lot of success from clients using this in their own experiments and prototypes. We're going to make that generally available in Q3 of 2025. That means that it's got our normal testing, documentation, hardening support that comes along with any of our production grade products. So we're excited for that. And then the chat UI that we demonstrated is an early prototyping or POC phase. We're going to be bringing that out to you to get client feedback, iterate on the designs and the capabilities, and then build a production version of that in the second half of 2025. And last but not least, in addition to this AI webinar series, which I hope you're finding useful, we've kicked off a developer community led by our community manager, Tony Petrov, and that will have much more technical and sort of deeper dives into to that side of AI and interop in our MCP servers, for example. So with that, Leslie, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, in addition to the products that will be coming out as early experience and production releases and the future webinars, I'd also call your attention to the our client forums. It's something we've been running for a few years now. Clients come together. Our last one was the end of April in London. Our next one is 23rd of October in New York, which is the same week as the FT was the Finos open source software forum in New York, so you can attend both. And it would be a great way to meet. Most of the client forum is about our clients sharing their experience with other people. We've had a couple of AI demos in the past. I think there'll probably be a lot more in this coming thing. Great opportunity to sit down. We bring engineers across. So you can sit down and discuss real issues. And these pictures here are from the end of April meeting, some of the client presentations that we had there, which were incredibly informing. So save the date, and invites will be going out probably beginning of September, maybe end of August. But we'd look forward to seeing you there. Yeah. So
Yeah, Leslie, I think we're on to the Q&A section.
great. I think you're going to get a feedback thing popping up as well. Please let us know. There'll also be the opportunity to share feedback. But we've had some great questions, and so let me just pick up. The first one was I think I clicked answer live. How do I prevent or make sure that my proprietary information does not end up in Claude's database infrastructure? Really important question. So many clients that is a key concern of theirs, and the answer is that it comes down to the bit where Bob was talking about tool design, atomic versus composite. So, for example, those of you who look closely or watch the recording will see that we bring the client names of the client into the AI, which means they go into the database into the large language model, and there is always a risk. Although Claude is very clear that it won't share information, but there's certainly a concern that that information could escape, leak out to other people. And then you ask for a client, and you get their portfolio, the full portfolio details. So in answer to your question, if you choose composites that say, rather than tell me all my clients, you go find this client by name. And if you change your tool definition so that you return an opaque ID, maybe it changes on every run, and then you say, oh, tell me, has this client got exposure to Tesla? And you get back a true or false. Suddenly, by your tool design, you're actually completely changing the profile of the data that goes into the large language model. And so that's probably the most important way. Obviously, it depends if you have your own internal models. That's an alternative approach. And as I say, we've got a summer project looking at how much usage you can get from local models, which maybe mean you don't worry about where the data goes. But in answer, it's a really important question, and the primary way is through kind of clever composite action design, tool design, really. Um, Derek from the FTC3 thing says, how does this relate to MCP? And next week is the OSSF conference in London, and we're going to be there demonstrating this. And Derek, in answer to you, each tool can either be an Interop IO method, which maybe has a more structured thing, or an FTC3 intent. So actually, in our tool definition, for those of you who've played with an MCP server, you typically have a manifest that says this tool with this description, and then the bit about how it's implemented is either an interop IO method name or an FTC3 method. You talk about security, and the kind of key issue is security comes from two places, right? One is who's allowed to participate, what tools you have, and secondly, what tools do you expose? So, for example, don't display a place order, have a tool that says show order, and then there's a little bit of security in there. So it's about who you allow into your Interop platform and what you let your tools do. I'd say was the answer to those things. Um, and Bob, a couple of questions from Rahul about general availability of iOSS and MCP server you spoke about, and are we going to charge for them? And is there workspace integration seamless with the iOS Assist? So maybe you could just answer those.
Yeah, so the MCP server, as I mentioned, if there's an interest right now, our main goal is, as you can see with this webinar series, to partner with clients to get this in your hands so you can start experimenting with it. So we've made that available in the last 2 months as an early preview. So lower environments, UAT, dev environments, not production grade. That'll be ready in Q3 of this year. So we're looking at late September to roll that out, and it'll be packaged with the initially, the IO Connect desktop solution is the plan. On the
Maybe we
iOS,
change that to early Q3, Bob.
fair. Um, the the IO Assist or the Chat UI, as I mentioned, we're just getting that out of prototyping phase. So really, what I'd like to do, and certainly if there's anybody on this call that that really was of interest, or you think it could be useful, we are going to be taking that out for feedback. So I think initially that'll just be demos of what we've got, clickable prototype that's hooked up in the real world, and then uh, as we get that further down the road, we'll make it available in early preview. And so I don't have a specific date there, but our goal is to move very quickly through that after we get the first round of uh, of client feedback. The bigger question on the commercial side of our AI enablement, it's a good question. I mean, I think on some levels, the value we're showing here is really around the core interop capabilities. But as you can see, there is this additional set um, of investment we're making. I truly believe that while the MCP standard might seem light and is a straightforward protocol, as we're getting further into it, some of the questions like Derek asked, does the MCP server support FTC3 intents? Are there additional capabilities in terms of, how you orchestrate timeouts or throttling or batching requests? I think we're going to see the value of having somebody like Interop providing an official Interop MCP server, which is a long way to say that I view this similar to our other language adapters at this point for the MCP server, which would be an additional paid for capability. But hopefully that's because we're demonstrating the value as you go through these experiments. I certainly think that's been our experience with clients. The chat UI would be an additional module or product on top of our IO Connect platform. But happy to talk specifically about that. And again, our goal here is really to make sure that you're getting appropriate value for those. So Leslie, back to you.
Thanks. Will this work with any AI provider? Yes, obviously the Claude UI works with Anthropic, and that's all it does. In our chat UI, you can define it to work with other things. Originally, we were going to show doing the same workflow with OpenAI and Anthropic and getting the same actions, but it was too involved. But yes, we're supporting those, and we'll need to work out what else we need to support. But Anthropic and OpenAI are the two that we're definitely working with. Um, So, Bob, two questions about how do you create your own tools? I think it's a little bit like we were talking about with Derek about FTC3, but also can you just talk a little bit about what you were running when you came to run your server? So there's a question here to say, are you running a local MCP server? And I guess there's a difference between the desktop and the browser versions.
Yeah. So definitely running that locally. This is a MCP server on my machine, which is really again very lightweight. It's a config hooking up IO Connect to the MCP server. It's got a local tools definition file that I'm leveraging, and then I've registered that with Claude in my particular instance. So that's obviously where the traffic is external, but is a local MCP server with all of that communication handled on my desktop. Just to go back to one of Leslie's points around security, everything that I showed today is under uh, the user permissions that I have in my desktop. I can't access an application that I don't already have access to. The entitlements inside of those applications and the data granularity that I can see is the same that the AI could leverage on my behalf. So I'm not tapping into a back-end API or giving full access to databases or systems. And I think that's one of the interesting patterns that we've demonstrated today. In terms of creating my own tools, I think this is largely what we've seen clients do in their prototypes and POCs. Today, our tool definitions, we've got a lightweight set of interop tools that you would expect, opening applications, for example, or getting the current user. But most of the use cases that have been impactful really do require some configuration and choices around the tool definition. So it's absolutely extensible. It's designed to be that way. We've got the standard tools to get you out the gate going, and not reinvent the wheel. But then from there, the tool definition really becomes yours to define based on the interop methods and the FTC3 intents that you have available in your interop environment.
I think there's two things I'd just like to add to that. The first about running a local MCP server, yes, it's running in our IO Connect desktop browser. When we come to run our chat UI in the browser, running a local MCP server is not the best architecture. We can go through exactly why, but if you look at the MCP protocol, there are some reasons why you don't want to do it that way. And so in our chat UI, when it wants to make use of the interop methods, it doesn't need an MCP server. It just uses the same tools definition, doesn't go through the MCP protocol, and it all just works. So it's MCP server like, and we're not sure about opening up in the browser, opening up other MCP servers where they have a library of stuff. There's a lot of MCP servers out there. You can go onto the web and find lots. Most of our clients, we wouldn't recommend that they just pick up random MCP servers. But so yes, there's a local MCP server in this demo. When you're running in the pure browser, strictly you don't, because when we're asking about can you create your own tools, the large wealth manager I was describing have a load of applications, 500 applications. Maybe a user might be running 30 or 40 have available. And so the big thing they're doing in their tools is not how do they create them. They're all interop or FTC3 methods. It's about choosing the subset that you want to expose to the AI, and then also choosing descriptions that make sense. Certainly, this prompt engineering about your role, what's the task, what's the tool, choosing the right words is key to having success. And that's something we're learning about. And we think there could be some really useful things in sharing that. Um, there's a question here about, well, actually, I'll come to that last of all. Bob, for you, given you're having these conversations with people, where do you feel that kind of firms are overestimating or underestimating the complexity of uh, integrating AI or delivering benefits from AI to their users? Do you think it's easier or harder than it looks?
Yeah, I think what we've shown today and what's resonated with clients that we've shown our capabilities to is that they're probably uh, overestimating the complexity of integrating AI into existing workflows. Um, to be clear, we're not say an AI company. We don't have machine learning capabilities or data scientists on staff today. But what we quickly saw is that AI really unlocked some of the existing value props and use cases for interop that have always been there. They're just providing a additional way to to work with users to script applications and to drive those efficiencies and scale in the workflows. And so because there's not a huge amount of model training or even upfront spend to get a prototype working, everything is observable. It's human in the loop. The tools have to be approved. The actions have to be approved. It's safe to use. I think that's been the really neat thing for me is that people are surprised with how quickly they can get something up and running that they can demonstrate and explain to their organizations. It's not a black box. This is a tool. This is how it's defined. This is the prompt and the request I had for my Copilot. Here's the tool it selected. Here's the outcome. Here's the work product. I reviewed it. It's good. Our firm's reputation isn't at risk here. So I think for me, typically a lot of people are saying we need to do something with AI. They may be overestimating either the spend or the complexity. I think there's definitely some work to be done here. I mean, there's use case definition and finding ways to address some of the security challenges that are going to be unique organization to organization. But in terms of getting started, I think it's easier than it looks today. And if you've already invested in Interop and you have those scriptable applications and the connective tissue between them, you're well equipped to do some quick experiments and hopefully get some momentum going inside of your organizations. I mean, I think the key here is to have a line of sight to something that's actually going to add value in a production setting in the next 3 to 6 months. A lot of people we've talked to have said, we've got a lot of AI initiatives. We're definitely going to do something here from the top. There's budget, there's momentum there. But for my team and my applications and my users, we're pretty far back in the queue. So you allowed me to get something out there that was production boost using AI to my users uh, this year as opposed to 2026 or 2027. So that to me is where I say people are probably overestimating the effort. And not that there isn't effort, but yeah, you can get started much more rapidly than you probably expected.
Yeah, I mean, Dan Schleifer, my co-founder, was at Trade Tech in Paris last month and did this in a set of round tables. And he had these kind of standard questions about how many of you uh, have AI projects going on. Reasonable number of hands went up. How many of you think they're going to be delivered to your traders, trader tech, in the next 6 months? Every single hand went down. I think there's a lot of uncertainty about. Everyone knows it's going to change everything at some point in the next period of time, insert either 6 months or 10 years. Um, and I say, yeah, we have a slightly different take that supports that, as I said. So I think that that's the complexity of delivering your own models, fully agentic workflows, really difficult to understand how much risk I'm taking on. And this is a way to get benefits now. And it's slightly different. Orthogonal doesn't stop you doing the big heavy lifting stuff, but you can get going. And so, yeah, I think that that's an important point. We're coming towards the end of the thing. I'm very happy to say that actually everybody, there's that thing, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. Well, obviously that's the case with you lots. Everyone who's replied has found this very useful, which is fantastic feedback. Um, and for those who didn't find it useful, thank you for sparing our feelings. Um, and we will be running a sequence of future webinars. And we're really interested in your use cases, your ideas, what was of interest to you. One final question, I think, Bob, for you. What excites you most about the next 6 to 12 months in enterprise, in AI and in the enterprise environment?
Yeah, well, I mean, a couple of things. I think it's getting more well-defined and cheaper to deploy some of these AI solutions. I think personally, I've been really encouraged to see that there's this acknowledgement that the state-of-the-art models at the top tier maybe aren't required for every use case. And so I think just finding that balance of functionality and cost is exciting to me as somebody that's trying to actually deploy this out into the real world on a interop level. I think it's just seeing some of these experiments move to production. We've had, as you mentioned, Leslie, the time frame is really accelerated since our London client forum 2 months ago. We've had dozens of conversations. We've got multiple late stage proofs of concept and prototypes that our clients have been using. So I'm excited to support those clients and getting them actually rolled out into production and be able to share back with this group and our community what that actually looks like, as well as the blueprints on how to do that successfully, so we could emulate the success of some of the early adopters here. So that's probably how I'd answer that, Leslie.
I think I'll add two things to that from my side. One was a comment again from Dan in Paris at Trade Tech was that he sometimes thought when he was showing your wealth manager workflow and people were seeing Interop and a workflow and the applications working together, the client list, the portfolio, PowerPoint, Outlook, he thought suddenly for the first time they really understood what an Interop enabled workflow actually looked like. And it wasn't even AI that impressed them the most. And so I think that what I think we'll see is that having done, for example, your wealth management stuff, it doesn't require a lot of natural language processing, and so potentially I just generated some JavaScript, and it can be run. So you're using the AI as a way to define a workflow. So instead of going into those no-code things where you draw lines between boxes with logic stuff, you'll end up with demoing this or testing this out and then asking the AI as the final step to generate the JavaScript, and then you'll make that available maybe from the chat UI as another prompt library and just go from there, so that you're using it, we're showing AI what it can do, how it can work as a co-pilot. But sometimes I think a lot of the stuff that you produce, you don't actually need to run AI, which improves security concerns and auditability and everything else.